How's it going, guys? So now let's get into the first rewrite. So this one is going to talk about is when you get given two algebraic fractions which are multiplying by themselves, and how to actually multiply, and how to almost like multiply them as one, into one fraction. So let me tell you what I'm talking about. So for example, imagine you have, let's say, 3x over 5 minus, no, I'm talking about minus, I meant times 4x over 2. Now, some people, if that looks difficult to you, all I want you to do is imagine if you were, think back to when you multiply any two fractions. So let's just pick 2 times 3 times, say, 3 over 8. So how do we multiply any two fractions? Simple. We just multiply the top two numbers together. So it's literally 2 times 3 equals 3 times 8. So this becomes what it becomes, and that doesn't matter. But yeah, 6 over 24, you can cancel that down. Well, guess what? Just because the fractions of algebra num doesn't mean there's any difference in this at all. So if we want to make this into one fraction, like we did with these two fractions, we made it into one, simple. Multiply all of that by all of that. So the top is going to be 3x times 4x, and the bottom is going to be 5 times 2, which is 10. Now remember, 3x times 4x, really simple if you want to work that out. So you've got 3x times 4x, so you break that down, that's 3 times x, 4 times x, and that's times them together. We reshuffle the order because it doesn't matter what order we multiply stuff in. So this is exactly the same. Obviously this is 12, and this, whoops, I should have been covering that as well, is x squared. Obviously times that. So here we go, 12x squared. And really, hopefully, if you've been watching these videos, you get how to do this stuff pretty quickly now. I mean, I don't think I'm going to keep breaking it down as I keep going through these videos. Now, here, you might still be a little bit confused on how to cancel this down. If you are, there's an earlier video which I did at the start, which is cancelling anything. It's such an important video because you're going to see fractions in some way, shape or form all the time through GCSE. So here's how you do it. If we want to cancel this, we rewrite the top and bottom as a chain of things multiplying. And remember, if we want to cancel this, we're trying to look for something in common which you can multiply. So, for example, I can write 12 as 2 times 6 times, I could do x times x, or I could just write x squared. I'll do it the full way right now. And the bottom is 2 times 5. Look, I've rewritten the top and bottom as a chain of things multiplying. And now, look, I have a number which is the same top and bottom, so I'll cross them out. Okay? And now, nothing else can cancel. Obviously, there's no x's on the bottom, so it's not going to cancel with that. 6 can only break down to 3 and 2, and 5 can't break down any further, so they're not going to be the same. So there's your answer. Your answer is 6x squared over 5. Which, if you remember from one of the earlier tips, you can either leave it like that, but hopefully you understand that's the same as 6 over 5x squared. If not, watch those 5 tips. I think it's tip number 1 or 2, I can't remember. So that's how you do that. Hopefully that's straightforward. So now let me get a little bit more interesting. What if you had x over 1 divided by 2 times, let's say, 3x, just for the sake of it, over 5. Again, it's the same thing. We're going to do that multiplied by that over that over that. So the bottom is 10. Just by coincidence, I picked the same numbers. Now this one is interesting. How do we multiply those? Some people might think, oh, I multiply that by that. So I do 3x times 1, which is 3x. And then I add that x, obviously. That's not right. I'll tell you that right now. Wrong. Now, you've got to think about this. And the way we think about this is if we think back to how normal fractions work when you try to multiply them. So if you do 2 over 5 times, say, 4 over 3. Now, we know that obviously the top becomes just the top thing's multiplied and the bottom becomes the bottom thing's multiplied. But here's how you should have been, no, not maybe how you should have been told, but this is what's actually happening. It's actually the whole of the top times whole of the bottom. And I'll tell you why that makes a difference. And it's also whole of that times all of that. The reason I say this is for this reason. If we're going to multiply all of that by all of that, you need to think of this as a bracket. Anytime you're trying to multiply something which has more than one term, you see it? And all I mean by a term is something which is kind of separated by a plus or minus. You've got to stick this in a bracket. So really it's got to be 3x times the whole of x plus 1. Now this is the same as writing that. So yeah, it's a single bracket multiplication thingy. Can't remember what's, you know what I mean. Yeah, so this one, now we multiply that out, remember 3x times x, 3x times 1, so hopefully you guys are now comfy, that's 3x squared plus x over 10. By the way, sometimes, you know, it's not like, you don't, remember, when we multiply out the brackets here, from here to here, we're just rewriting it. So this, you know, this could be good enough, this could be good enough, that could be good enough. So yeah, that's how you do that one. So let's have a look at a few more examples. Let's do a divide one this time, and you'll see basically how little extra work there is when you do dividing. So, you know, let's do x plus 1 over 4x divided by, I'm just making this up top of my head as well. Let's divide it by 2x plus 3 over 3x minus 1. So okay, so when we think about how to do this, obviously I've made the tops and bottoms much more complicated, but that's just to show you that even something that's complicated like this, if you follow the steps, it's actually very straightforward. So now, let's kind of think back to a normal fraction, if we were dividing two fractions. Say we have 3 over 4 divided by, I don't know, 5 over 6. What would you do? You would flip the second one and make it a multiply. So it would be this. Okay? And then you multiply as normal. Nothing changes here. So leave the first one the same. Flip the second one. And now you multiply. So here, so how do we do this? So this will be an interesting one. So remember, now we're multiplying all of that by all of that. So we need to put that in bracket. Well, let me change the color there so it's a bit more clear for you. So you know, I've got that's a rubbish color. Funny, I think we can be happy with that. So listen, we're going to have to put that in brackets. We're going to multiply that in brackets. For this is okay because this is just 4x by itself. There's no, we can put it in brackets, but there's no point because it's just one term. There's no plus or minuses. But this one has a plus or minus, so we've got to put it in brackets. So this becomes x plus 1 times 3x minus 1 over 4x 2x plus 3. Do you see that? And yeah, afterwards it's just a case of multiplying these things out. Double, you know, which you guys should be happy with, so I'll do it just for the sake of it. 3x squared minus x plus 3x and minus 1. So this one, 4x times 2x, that's 8x squared. That's not making sense to you. Go back to the multiplying out single brackets. It's pretty straightforward. Plus 12x. Okay, and obviously we can simplify these. So minus x, which is just minus 1 plus 3 plus 2x. There you go. So hopefully, so do you see how this quite? So when you see an algebraic equation like this, looks quite scary. But look, we think about, here's how you've just got to see this as a fraction divided by fraction. Now when you divide two normal fractions, you usually flip the second one over and make it into multiplies. Exactly the same here. Now just when you're trying to multiply two fractions together, you multiply the tops together. So remember, if you're at this stage, you multiply these two together, you multiply these two together. Exactly the same thing here. But the only difference being that if you have more than one thing, more than one term, make sure you put a bracket. Put a bracket around it, because remember, you're multiplying all of the top by all of the other top and all of the bottom times all of the bottom. And obviously if you've got brackets, then you go back down to multiplying out brackets and these kind of things. So hopefully you're seeing like the maths kind of, what's the deal? Kind of like, sorry, I can't multitask. Yeah, so you're seeing like the earlier maths, which I'm showing you, coming into the later maths. And it's I keep saying this, a lot of people are actually weak at earlier stages in maths, and then they try to do harder stuff, and that's why they find it hard. So this is why I'm doing this in a nice order, and hopefully it's making sense. I'll do one more example for you. So we say 2x minus 2 divided by, let's say, 4x squared over x minus 2 equals 2. This is actually going to be an interesting example, actually. So I flip the second one. Now, you may be tempted. Well, no, okay, so let's go to this scenario. Multiply, so you would multiply that together. I guess I should put that front. Let me swap that. I mean, the reason I'm rubbing it out, I'll tell you, I was going to write x minus 2, 4x squared. That's fine, but you know how it's normally you kind of write the stuff, multiplying the brackets at the front. So that's why I was rubbing it out. It's not wrong, it's just you don't write like that. Now listen, you might be tempted to multiply at the brackets here, but don't. Because if you notice something, that is equal to 2 times x minus 2. Do you see that? The bottom is equal to 4 times x times x minus 2. Now pause this for a second when I tell you to, and think why I'm saying don't multiply it out yet. And if you're not sure, think back to how do you cancel something off the top and bottom of a fraction? If you're unsure about that, do yourself a massive favor. Go back and watch the cancelling anything video. And so watch it and then see why I'm saying this, and pause it and have an actual think. Don't have me spoon feed all of this to you. I'm not going to be able to spoon feed you in the exam. No one's going to be. So have a think, pause it. If you're really in a rush and really can't be bothered, then alright, don't pause it. But okay, pause it and see in a sec. Okay. Hopefully you paused it. Now the reason I was telling you not to bother multiplying this out, because we could have made this 2x minus 4. We could have made it 4x to the 3 minus 8x squared. See that? Now, there's a reason you don't want to multiply it out. Because look, if we think of the top and bottom as a chain of things multiplying, do you see that? Do you see that? We actually have two things on the top and bottom which are the same. The first is this whole bracket. So we can actually cross that out. See that? Now what you can actually do is you can actually break this 4 down further as well. To 2 times 2. So we can actually cross that out. So by the way, we're left with a 1 here. Not a 0. Some people think if you cross everything out on the top, you're left with a 0. You're not left with a 0. You're left with the 1. So yeah, what does it end up as? 1 over 2x squared. That's right. This whole mess was 1 over 2x squared. Okay, so have a think about that. Now don't worry, we'll be looking at a few more of these, but hopefully this teaches you Joining, if I give you two fractions and I stick x's, y's, whatever in there, and I tell you to times or divide them, simple. You can just make, you don't even, and here's the one common mistake. If you think to multiply two fractions together, you need a common denominator, you don't know your fractions well enough, and you need to go work on your fractions again. But assuming you do know that when you're just multiplying or dividing, you know, if you're dividing, you're going to flip the second one, but at the end of it, you're just going to multiply the two tops together and two bottoms together, just like you would for any old fraction. But obviously, if you've got more than one term and all of that, then like, you know, you're going to have to stick brackets around it. Fingers crossed that's reasonably straightforward enough. Right, so now, whoops, I'll go on to the next video, which is, what is the next video? Oh yeah, so in this video obviously I showed you how to join two fractions together if you're multiplying or dividing them. Next I'll show you if you're adding or subtracting them. And this is a really useful one because this really helps you learn. You solve a lot of equations. Whatever man, just watch the next video.